And with that, I did want to, I wanted to raise this to both of you guys because the Undertaker, who had what we know to be pretty much, as far as we know, it's meant to be his final hurrah at WrestleMania in the Boneyard match against AJ Styles. He's having a final farewell at Survivor Series, the same event that he debuted about 30 years ago. And so with that, I wanted to open up the floor, so to speak, and hear you guys' thoughts on your favorite memories and moments from the Undertaker's career. James, I'll have you start. What do you think?
Oh man, that's very numerous modes. I mean, I've always enjoyed the Undertaker's work from when I first saw him the debut until the American Badass phase until basically the hybrid dead man cowboy Undertaker cowboy Old West dead soul thing. I don't know what he was doing at the end, but other than that, probably I probably honest with you if I have to think like my favorite moment on the Undertaker, I don't know if I can like pick one. I mean, there's a couple of things that this because I remember one of the things I did have a good moment of is I remember going to a show, a live Raw, back. This was shoot almost 20 years ago. About 20 years, yeah. Whoa, yeah, shoot, almost 20 some years ago. And just it was just there's nothing like an Undertaker entrance. It's like you actually technically feel just they just like the whole arena gets cold and the lights go out and you get goosebumps in your shoulder. The music goes off, ding, and then you see it, and then the smoke rise. You see him come walking out, and you're just like, damn. Like I said, it's about 20 years ago, like almost 20 some years ago, and it's just like, damn, man. And that's a, and I was right there. I could see the entrance coming through the entrance, and it's just it's almost out where there's nobody has a better entrance than that, and it was just added to just the mystique of that. But I've always joined every incarnation of Undertaker. I love the American Badass, just riding the bike, and Big Evil Red Devil. I used to have that shirt too. That's one of the shirts I bought too. The Big Evil Red Devil. I love that shirt. And so yeah, so my probably my favorite though may have been I did enjoy when he was evil Overlord Undertaker in the Ministry of Darkness. Well, essentially, he's the Lord of Darkness now. It's like, well, he went from the zombie to the Lord of Darkness. Like, but yeah, I did enjoy that. What about you, Chris? What you got?
So my Undertaker, of course, as growing up, was more the 2000s than it was
Yeah.
the Attitude Era, just because of my age, right? I'm 30.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. That's awful. Anyway, so for me, I think what stands out for the Undertaker it was when they really started kind of developing the streak as a thing.
Yeah.
Right, because before I think maybe WrestleMania 17 or 18, it wasn't really a thing. It was just happenstance that he kept winning at WrestleMania. Not so much that it was like someone noticed it around like 9 or 10 or something. That Undertaker keeps winning at WrestleMania. Maybe we should make it a thing. And so we have the matches with, of course, with Shawn Michaels twice, which was late 2000 at this point. But I also think about like Mark Henry, Big Show.
Yeah.
Right. Who else tried to dethrone him in the mid 2000s? Oh, Randy Orton, of course. Like the Legend Killer versus the Undertaker, and you thought that was the one that was going to do it. And so those are really kind of the moments that stick out to me. I did see Undertaker live, an Undertaker entrance live. It kind of broke the mystique being there live as opposed to on TV because the arena can never get dark enough. I don't think.
Worked for me. It's a smaller arena.
It was the episode of Raw where he threatened like consequences for the Survivor Series for SmackDown Survivor Series, and then no consequences ever happened. But that's besides the point. But yeah, I mean, it's really it's like it's the big pay-per-views. It's Mania, it's Survivor Series to some extent, and then the Boneyard match. AJ Styles.
Yeah, I feel like there's a reason why.
Like he's always been more of an in-ring person for me. Like I never like his out of ring work in its heyday was like late '90s Attitude Era, Ministry of Darkness. But when that all ended, when he was the American Badass, and then when he was
I love the American Badass,
the Dead Man Badass, it was mostly in the ring. He had some great moments. I remember CM Punk versus the Undertaker. Who was the person who stole the urn and like killed Paul Bearer?
That was CM Punk.
Was that Edge?
That was CM Punk. Yeah. Because
that was
happened. Like that's
no. He killed Paul Bearer though.
Oh, the kidnapping one. That was
Yeah, that was Paul Bearer and CM Punk. I mean, it was Heyman.
Yeah,
and
that was
CM
actually
Punk.
that was. Well,
and Undertaker does.
No, there's multiple.
And you know what it says to me is like every SmackDown versus Raw game, you would come against the Undertaker and it would involve the urn in like magic in some way.
Oh, there was a Great American Bash pay-per-view that for some reason it was Undertaker feuding with Paul Heyman and by extension or by proxy the Dudley Boys. That was the one where they kidnapped Paul Bearer. The Undertaker versus CM Punk feud leading into their WrestleMania match, that happened around the time that Paul Bearer actually, like William Moody, actually passed away in real life, and that got incorporated the way it did into the storyline.
Well, before that happened, though, in character, Taker killed Bearer.
Well, yeah, that was part of the like the way that storyline with the Dudleys and Paul Heyman ended.
Yeah, because they had up there he had him in like the cement truck.
Yep, that was from like
cement thing, and
I don't even remember what year that was. Yeah.
Pulls the thing and it comes down on top
so that
of him.
That was a whole thing. That was a little bit of a mess. I haven't forgotten about that because I still remember hearing. I can still remember hearing Paul Bearer crying out to the Undertaker as it's happening. Like crap. That's.
Because he did that high voice.
Exactly, and then they had to like explain. And then they explained like. They found a way to explain that he was okay.
Well, the expression was Paul Bearer made him weak, so he's like, "Oh, I can't let this happen again. Essentially, you're my weakness. I get rid of you. I'm no longer weak anymore."
So that was a bit of a mess in my opinion, but
it
was a good twist. But I mean, I don't know. I guess there were certain things about it that didn't sit right with me.
It never bothered me because it fit with who the Undertaker was. Everybody forgot who the Undertaker is. Essentially, what his character is. He's essentially basically a zombie. He's a walking, breathing, living zombie at the time.
Yeah.
And he's evolved. Well, the good news is he's evolved the character from zombie to undead overlord to American basically next to an American badass. He's basically a biker. He was a biker dead man, biker zombie to the Wild West, Old West zombie. Dead man.
I'm trying to remember. I think they said like they had something about him being like an outlaw or whatever at one point. Specifically his, I guess you would say his second match against Triple H, where they did the whole thing where, well, I don't know if you remember the 224 whatever thing where people were thinking that it was going to be Sting at that point, but no, it was Undertaker.
Well, it originally was. That was originally supposed to be They had set up. I remember it was originally they were trying to get Sting then. They were doing the vigillettes. They were doing the vigillettes with the house and everything. They were setting the vigillettes up with the house. So they were trying to get Sting then. And this is what E does. E does this sometimes. They jump before they have everything. So they were setting it up, and behind the scenes they were trying to get Sting, and it fell through. And they're like, okay, we'll morph it because we haven't shown anybody. We'll just morph it to the Return of the Undertaker. Yeah. And they did the Old West. He was basically the outlaw dead man. Old West outlaw dead man. When he opens the door.
Yeah.
Originally, that was supposed to be Sting. The door was supposed to open, and that was going to be Sting. And it just didn't.
It just didn't pan out
at the time. It wasn't. Sting was just too hesitant to do that. at the time,
What?
which he got a lot of. He said talked about. He said he got a lot of advice from the people who were like, oh, they're gonna treat you like this, and it's gonna be like that, and he listened to them instead of going in there. He said it too. I listened to a few of the people that told me about what's going to happen there, and then it just soured him to the
Yeah,
idea
I mean,
at
and
the time.
the reason I remember that so well because then they played it off in TNA where they got Sting to come back and they did the 3-3-11 thing there. I think like the same
Yeah.
year because of that same scenario. Yeah.
Again, that's what happens. Sting heard a lot of people
So
was
you
telling
want to
him.
do the last word on Undertaker memories? Because honestly,
Yeah, no, I know.
Oh, yeah.
I was just gonna say for myself personally, not only because I started watching right at the tail end of the Attitude Era, and so for me, my Undertaker is not only the American Badass, but more specifically, the one who had Limp Bizkit's rolling for his entrance because I wasn't watching when he had American Badass by Kid Rock. I had so.
Yeah.
I like the American Badass by Kid Rock. I really like that one. I thought that was perfect because they just it fit perfect. I love the cut of it when they cut that section.
Oh yeah,
right
no,
into
exactly.
a
There's
song.
something funny about freaking the gong, the dead man walking,
Yeah.
and then into freaking Limp Bizkit. But yeah, so that was my Undertaker
Yeah.
growing up. So it was actually really interesting to see him go kind of go back to the dead man character for
Still,
WrestleMania 20, and then how that evolved.
that
I
interest
I will say
still
like
works.
my WrestleMania moments with Taker are a little bit different because like I actually had I don't know this is I a lot of people give the WWE a hard time about like the WrestleMania 19 match. That was like it was meant to be a tag match and then it became a handicap match and then Nathan Jones came in at the very end. I liked the match for what it was, but more to the point, there was something, and I'm trying to remember which WrestleMania it was, but it was the WrestleMania when he wrestled against Mark Henry, and
I think it was WrestleMania.
22.
Mark
22.
Henry.
Okay.
22. Yeah. 22.
The casket match.
Yeah.
And watching the Undertaker dive over the top rope onto Mark Henry. That was a surprise and a half. But yeah, my final word on Undertaker is like, there's Chris even said like we could in theory do a whole like separate episode.
You can do a whole set
about
of shows.
Yeah, I do like.
And maybe we will.
Yeah, not today. But
13.
yeah.
Undertaker. The only time he won the feud, the first time he won the world title at WrestleMania was WrestleMania 13. I just thought that was just. I don't know if they planned it that way.
An
or
oddly
just
appropriate one, given how cursed that WrestleMania was.
Yeah.
But so yeah, so that was
And then one more thing before we go. I did like one of the favorite things. I know people hated it was the Undertaker versus Undertaker with him and Primetime Brian Lee. I kind of love that.
They got Leslie Nielsen in to work on the case, so there's that.
Okay, well,
no.